Close your eyes. Picture gleaming marble statues, iron legions marching in perfect formation, emperors lounging on thrones of gold. That's the Rome you know. But the moment the palace doors slam shut and the crown touches the head, the real nightmare begins. Because one of ancient Rome's most savage wars was never fought with swords on distant battlefields. It was fought in the shadows of the imperial palace between a mother and her own son. There are mothers who would die for their sons. Then there is Agrippina the Younger, the mother who killed for her son, who crawled into his bed to keep him leashed, and who forged him into a monster so she could rule the world through his trembling hands. Roman historians swore Nero tried to murder his own mother 3 times. She laughed off poison. She clawed her way out of a ship engineered to crush her bones and drag her into the black Mediterranean depths. But every time death spat her back out, something far more twisted waited in the darkness. This is not a simple murder tale. This is the story of 2 devils who sculpted each other in fire and blood. One placed the crown with shaking ambition. The other wore it and learned to crave the taste of betrayal. When those 2 monsters finally collided, no one walked away with their soul still breathing. If you think your family is toxic, you have never stared into the abyss that was Agrippina and Nero. Ancient Rome had names for treason, for incest, for emperors who declared themselves living gods, but even they had no single word dark enough for the venom that flowed between this mother and son. We still don't. All we have left are the cold bodies they left behind and the nightmares they planted deep in history's throat. Before we descend into the blood-soaked corridors of that palace, smash the comments section with your city and country right now. Because once you witness how far a mother's hunger for power can stretch and how deep a son's hatred can sink, you will never look at your own family the same way again. Agrippina was never handed kindness. She was the sister of Caligula, the mad emperor who made Rome tremble. She survived his sick games, survived exile on a barren rock, survived having every title and dignity stripped from her flesh. When she crawled back to Rome with blood under her nails, she wasn't seeking peace or forgiveness. She was hunting a throne. Women could not sit on the imperial seat themselves, so she chose the perfect vessel, her teenage son, Nero. Only one obstacle stood in her way. Emperor Claudius already had a blood heir, Britannicus. So Agrippina did what ambitious Roman she-wolves do best. She removed the problem with a smile. She scoured Italy for the most treacherous mushrooms. Not the ones that drop you dead in minutes and scream poison. The slow, cruel kind that begin like simple food sickness, then quietly rot your organs from the inside while physicians scramble and fail. She hired Locusta, Rome's deadliest poison artist, the woman who ran a specialty service in elegant death. Locusta prepared the dish with expert hands. Agrippina served it to her husband with the tender smile of a devoted wife. Claudius ate. Within hours, the ruler of the world was gasping, clawing at his throat, drowning in his own froth, right in front of the woman who fed him death and the boy she planned to crown in his place. Days later, Agrippina had the Senate eating from her palm. Britannicus was too young, too weak. Nero was older, already married to Claudius's daughter Octavia. The fix was flawless. At just 16 years old, Nero became emperor of Rome, and Agrippina stood directly behind the throne, one hand resting possessively on his shoulder, whispering every command that left his lips. For the first years, it was a masterpiece of control. Nero was her marionette. She pulled every string. Coins were minted, showing both their faces side by side. The message to the empire was unmistakable. I made this emperor. I own every breath he takes. But teenagers ripen into men, and no puppet stays obedient forever. Nero found a lover, Acte, a freed woman with no noble blood, no political value. Agrippina erupted. She stormed his private chambers like a fury, screaming, threatening, reminding him in venomous detail that without her, he would still be nothing. That night, for the first time, Nero looked at his mother, and his eyes held something colder than fear. They held pure, seething hatred. Then the palace whispers turned darker than anyone dared speak aloud, whispers so unholy they made battle-hardened Romans shudder. Tacitus and Suetonius both recorded them in horror. They claimed Agrippina, desperate to keep her grip, began using her own body as the ultimate chain, that she would climb into the litter with him, press kisses that crossed every forbidden line, and that Nero, broken or willing, may have surrendered to it. Seneca, Nero's philosopher tutor, panicked and physically shoved another woman between mother and son to prevent the final irreversible sin. Whether the stories were exact or swollen by enemies no longer matters. The fact that Romans who had endured Caligula still found this believable tells you the relationship had already become a living nightmare.
Nero's hatred festered into something demonic. He could not escape her shadow. She haunted every corridor, every council, every sleepless night. He made his decision. She had to vanish from existence. But killing a woman who had spent years preparing for exactly that murder, that was going to be hell. Agrippina had practiced Mithridatism, swallowing tiny doses of poison daily to build iron immunity. Her body had become a fortress against Rome's favorite weapon. First attempt, poison again. Nero summoned Locusta and demanded her strongest formula. He watched his mother consume every bite across the dinner table. She finished the meal, lifted her eyes, and gave him a slow, knowing smile that said, "Nice try, boy." The poison failed completely. Nero's rage became volcanic. No more quiet cups. He summoned architects and shipbuilders with a single terrifying order. Construct a luxurious vessel for my mother. Make the roof collapsible on command so it crushes everyone beneath. Make the hull split open so the sea swallows any survivors. Dress it as an accident. The trap was perfect. He invited Agrippina to a festival at Baiae. The night before, he embraced her tightly, kissed her forehead, pressed his face into her hair. Perhaps guilt flickered for one heartbeat. Then he sent her to the ship. The Mediterranean night was calm and black as ink. Agrippina reclined in the opulent cabin, surrounded by servants. Then the signal came. The roof thundered down with a deafening crash. Timbers and beams smashed bodies. Her loyal attendant was pulped instantly, blood spraying across silk and gold. Agrippina was hurled sideways, bruised and bleeding, but still conscious. Then the bottom of the ship yawned open. Freezing seawater exploded inside. At 50 years old, never trained for battle or sea, she fought like a cornered lioness. She dove into the pitch-dark water and swam desperately for shore while screams and drowning bodies churned around her. She reached the sand, coughing seawater, bleeding, alive once more. Her message to Nero was ice. "I survived your charming little accident, my son. Don't worry, I am perfectly safe."
When Nero read those words, the color drained from his face. Seneca leaned close and whispered the truth. "She will come for you now. No more pretending. It is her or you." Nero's hands shook. That same night he sent Anicetus with soldiers and swords. No more clever machines, only cold steel. They stormed her villa under cover of darkness. Agrippina heard the heavy boots in the hallway. She sat up in bed, waiting like a queen. The door exploded open. Anicetus struck her head with a club. Blood poured down her face. A soldier raised his sword for the killing blow. Agrippina tore open her nightgown, bared her womb, and screamed with her final breath, "Strike here! Strike the womb that bore Nero!" The blade drove in, once, twice, 3 times. She stared straight into their eyes until the light died.
If your blood is already running cold and you need more of this raw, hidden history that schools refuse to teach, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss the next descent into the darkness. That same night, Nero visited the corpse. He stood over his mother's bloody body, studied her naked form with clinical detachment, made remarks about her figure, then called for wine and slept like an innocent child. But peace did not last. The second night, the nightmares began. Agrippina's ghost rose, surrounded by the screaming Furies carrying torches of black fire. They chased him through endless palace corridors. Every night she wrapped her cold hands around his throat and squeezed until he woke, gasping and drenched in sweat. No priest, no sacrifice, no amount of excess could silence her.
Nero told the Senate his mother had been a traitor, plotting his death and seduction. He had defended himself. The same senators who once bowed to Agrippina cheered and voted to erect temples thanking the gods for saving their emperor from his wicked mother. One murder unlocked the next. Britannicus was poisoned at dinner, convulsing and foaming while guests politely looked away. His wife Octavia's severed head was delivered as a gift to his new lover. When that lover, pregnant Poppaea, complained about his late nights, Nero kicked her stomach until she bled out and died. He had learned Agrippina's final lesson perfectly. Killing gets easier every single time. He sang on stage while Rome burned. Some say he lit the fire himself for a new palace. He married a boy who resembled his dead wife and forced the empire to treat the boy as empress. He executed anyone who failed to applaud his performances with enough enthusiasm. And every single night, Agrippina came back to strangle him in his dreams. So tell me in the comments right now, could Nero have become anything different, or was he damned from the exact moment his mother placed that crown on his head and whispered that he owed her the entire world? If this kind of brutal, uncensored history is what you crave, smash subscribe and turn on notifications. Share this with anyone who thinks their family drama is bad. Perspective is everything. In the end, Nero got exactly what he wanted. He was finally free of his mother's shadow, free to descend into madness, free to burn Rome and everyone in it, free to destroy himself completely. Agrippina taught him that murder solves problems. Nero proved her right and lost his soul in the process. Monsters are rarely born. Sometimes they are patiently, lovingly crafted by the very hands that gave them life.